Hello and welcome to A Tribe Called Cars. My name is Ben Griffin and today you join me in a rather cloudy Morocco. The reason I'm here is because Ford has invited me to the European launch of the Raptor Ranger, which is the top of the range Baja Rally beast of a pickup. Now they call the car badass, so I've been putting it through its paces just to see how badass it can really be. Ford Ranger Raptor gets its name not from the tiny-armed bringer of death, but the American fighter jet capable of twice the speed of sound. It will sit atop the Ranger range when it arrives mid-2019. To be fair, the Australian-developed Ranger Raptor is just as honed as a Velociraptor. It's got serious suspension travel at the front and rear, Fox shock absorbers and dampers, bespoke 33-inch BF Goodrich off-road tyres with 11-inch sidewalls, ventilated disc brakes instead of drums, and a 150mm wider track than the standard Ranger. All upgrades designed to make it very fast off-road. Ford has also fitted a high-strength steel bash plate that's 2.3mm thick and ran the grueling Baja Rally in a prototype to see which areas of the chassis frame take the most punishment, and then made those thicker. The result is 3 odd tons and 5,400mm of pickup monster, which has obstacle-friendly front and rear overhangs for driving over things. It can also wade through water up to 850mm in depth and rides nearly the length of a school ruler above the floor. Oh, and it's capable of recovering a stuck vehicle up to 4,635kg in weight when using the front towing hooks, just in case lesser pickups get stuck. I think the most immediate thing you notice about driving this car is just how car-like it is, and that's despite being a 3.3-ton beast with huge amounts of suspension travel, beefed up chassis, beefed up everything. It really is designed to do the sort of Baja Rally off-road type stuff, and yet here on tarmac it's really relaxed, it's really pleasant. 10-speed auto is smooth. You sort of forget how big the car is, and that's a bit of an achievement in itself. The Ford Ranger Raptor looks meatier too, thanks to an F-150 Raptor-inspired grille and flared arches. Just the sheer size of the thing helps make it an imposing beast. Unless you're from America, in which case you'll just think it's adorable. Given how it looks, you would expect a V8 engine like in the larger, more America-friendly F-150. Instead though, you get a rather weedy 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel with 210 brake horsepower. What it lacks in sheer displacement, however, is made up for with 369 foot-pounds of torque from 1,750 RPM. This helps propel the four-wheel Ranger Raptor from 0 to 62 in 10.5 seconds and then up to 106 miles per hour. The diesel has been getting a lot of flack because despite being a 2-litre biturbo and despite having more torque and horsepower than the 3.2 Duratorque that it replaces, it is a little weedy. For a car this big and this sort of beefy, you'd think it would have some sort of V8 or at least something with a little bit more oomph. However, it is actually quicker from 0 to 62, and that 500 Nm of torque really does make it effortless when you go off-road, and actually it builds speed pretty well on the road. In fairness though, Ford's argument is that having a more frugal engine actually gives you the range. So whereas with a V8 you'd probably spend most of your life filling the thing up in between driving to the beach or whatever, whereas this will do around 30 miles per gallon in theory, and it's actually probably kind of believable. The 33-inch tyres and the suspension actually works really well at making this comfortable on and off road. We were chucking it through sand dunes and it never felt out of its depth or, you know, too much discomfort. And on the road it just sort of trundles along, cruising over pretty much everything, and it's never uncomfortable. The reworked rear end features a unique design which ditches the usual leaf springs. Instead you get dampers and coilover springs and a Watts linkage system, which is meant to help with lateral shake. Meanwhile, position-sensitive damping provides a soft ride over small to medium bumps, but stiffens up dramatically at the top end to avoid bottoming out. It's also really quiet in here, as you can probably tell. It's actually a very refined car. Well, I say car, I've forgotten again that it's a bloody pickup. There are a few negatives, however. For one thing, the interior is a little bit Ford. The Sync 3 is okay. It's not the best navigation system in the world. The plastics in here are durable, which you want in a car like this. It's going to be used by farmers and people that go off-road and get it muddy, and it's going to get trashed and probably have to cope with family life as well. And so that's not a bad thing, but it does look a little uninspired, a little dated. But I guess as a pickup, that's not such an essential thing to worry about. What is a little less good is the steering. It's just a bit vague. And again, it's not essential for you to feel everything that you're going over, but at the same time on roads, you do kind of notice it's not especially engaging. You don't feel particularly connected with the wheels. The brakes as well, they've been beefed up, bigger discs, more powerful calipers. So in theory, it should brake a lot better, but actually you still don't really want to go into a corner too fast or be caught by surprise by an obstacle or a pedestrian or a goat, as you'll see many of in Morocco, because you're not going to stop in time. The simple thing is, it is a more than 3 tons of metal, and so you have to drive accordingly. Actually, maybe it's better you're there, because I'm more like, yeah, maybe actually we'll raise the bar.
You won't have to cut so much.
No, exactly. I'll just bring you on every trip. Well, actually, you probably go on more than me. Yeah, yeah, you never drive. On the flip side though, they are nicely progressive brakes, so you don't really need to lose speed too much if you don't have to. It's very smooth. Again, it just adds to the fact that this is a really easy car to drive. However, when the roads get thin, that is when you're reminded that this is, I think, 2028 millimeters wide. It is by no means a small car. It's almost 5.4 meters long as well, which in America is quite small. If you look at this with the F-150 and the bigger pickups, this is almost laughably small to them. However, in Tesco's However, in St. No, let's stick with Tesco. Other supermarkets are available. However, in Tesco's car park, yeah, good luck trying to find a space that you're going to get this thing in easily. Or at least before the shop closes anyway. Helping with fuel efficiency and torque delivery is a 10-speed E80 automatic, which works with a terrain management system that has 6 driving modes, including the more tail-happy Baja and ones for specific terrain types, such as snow, sand and rocks. Now, being the Ford Performance version, there have been other tweaks made, so we've got the aforementioned brakes, we've got the new diesel, but also the whole chassis itself has been beefed up to be much stronger and more rigid, and of course that helps with durability and in some ways actually makes the car more enjoyable, more engaging perhaps. So it's not just the fact that there is a 32%, I believe, more travel at the front, there's also more travel at the back, and they basically redesigned the entire back end just to make it more capable of driving a ridiculous terrain fast and do it in a way that doesn't mean you're in bits by the end of it. Having said that, there have been a few cars that were driven yesterday that weren't there at breakfast today, and we're not quite sure exactly what has happened with these cars, but obviously they've needed some TLC, shall we say. Now that might not just be the fault of the car, we did push them really hard, but it could also be that some of the journalists are just a bit shit at driving perhaps. It is a £48,000 car though, so you want to be able to just chuck it anywhere and forget, and to be honest, it's unlikely most people that buy this car, particularly in the UK, will ever do any of the level of terrain that we've just seen. Is it 60 or 80? He was standing in front of the speed camera as well anyway. Of course, Ford has invited us here to drive the Halo model because we're going to say nicer things about it, but you don't have to spend £48,000. The Ranger XL, which is the entry level, is £22,000 excluding VAT. So you're well under 30k for what is a very large, very beefy pickup truck that you can put a jet ski or a motocross bike in the back. The option list is long for the entry-level Ford Ranger XL, which starts from £20,845 before VAT. But for the £48,784 Ranger Raptor, you need only pay extra if you fancy some rather plain stickers. Standard goodies include privacy glass, a rear view camera, lane keeping aid, 17-inch dyno alloys, bi-xenon headlights, daytime running lights, a cool box, keyless entry and start, heated seats and leather. For those who like to tow things meanwhile, stuff such as the trailer tow hitch and 13-pin socket are included. And that's rather useful given that the Ford Ranger Raptor can tow up to 2,500 kilograms of braked weight, as well as carry up to 620 kilograms in the cargo bed. As for colours, you can have grey or blue, which makes life simple. If it helps, the blue makes much more of an impact, although nobody's going to think you've chosen to blend in whichever colour you go for. To be fair though, this isn't really a car that you sort of buy for practicality, is it? It's a car that your lifestyle is probably a little bit extreme, or you just like the idea of driving something that's incredibly rugged and, in theory, fairly indestructible. And so 48,000, yeah, it's ridiculous, but what do you compare it with? The Wrangler's smaller and isn't a pickup. The Jimny, meanwhile, is very capable off-road, but it's much smaller and far less refined, so that's not really fair either. And then of course you've got the G-Wagon, which is considerably more expensive, and the Navara, which I think is not particularly nice to drive. This actually is pretty enjoyable almost all of the time. I like waving when they just want a lift. Yeah, you're not getting in, but I'll be friendly.
I'm a nice guy.
Yeah. It's also fair to say that perhaps this hasn't been the fairest road test in terms of emulating what this car would be like in the UK, but it's just been huge amounts of fun, just chucking it through the dunes, driving up ridiculous terrain, trying to get it to jump. Somebody managed to nearly tip the thing over, but they didn't. It's just been genuinely pleasing. So if your life allows you to do this kind of stuff and you want to do this, then yeah, ultimately then I do really like this car. It is massively appealing, and I think if you just wanted a big pickup, you could be quite happy, I'd imagine, in the XL model. Obviously it's not going to be as quick, not as beefy, but if it drives in a similar way to this, then it's a decent car. Decent enough anyway to make you forget that you could, in most cases, have bought something more practical for less money. But then this is a satisfying Ford performance beast that has attitude and ruggedness in spades, which means it should be enough to tempt non-farmers, non-builders and non-jet ski owners to buy one, even if the engine is, unfortunately, a little less badass than it should be.